What I really wanted to be doing was just sitting in ambient candlelight with my fire crackling next to me, knitting. But no, I was on the bloody government website trying to find more information about this bloody thing. Good afternoon. That's right, we got notes today. Not that it really helps, because everything that I've got to say on this topic is still clear as mud, and the topic is going to be a very festive topic, GPSR. But this is a handmade business Vlogmas, so talking about small business stuff is kind of on brand. Before I get started, if there's anybody new here, this is Vlogmas. It is a Vlogmas video. It's going to be chatty, and not all of it is going to be about GPSR. So, because I know that this video, because of the topic, it is going to get pushed out to other people who are perhaps new to this channel and my chattiness. So I have to warn you early on in the video, otherwise I get comments like, "Oh, why won't you just get to the point? Oh, you ramble too much." Ugh. Because I'm going to share with you my advent bag. That's not gonna be, oh dear, I dropped it and now it's unraveling. It looks like drugs. This is my husband again, and you'll actually have seen me at the beginning of this video lighting the last wax melt, which is very yummy. Now this is definitely cinnamon. I'm not a big cinnamon fan, but I don't mind the smell too much. And it hasn't rubbed off onto the chocolate, what is this one? The blue one was coconut, the green one, we've had fudge, that was pink. So what are you? Is that a plain chocolate? The green ones? I will have found out before you see this video, so don't worry, no need to answer. I already know. Or my daughter will, because I'm going to give it to her. I've got to be honest, I'm not really feeling the chocolates this year, but I think I've already said that in a previous video. Anyway, does anybody want some sock progress? Because there is some. I mean, it doesn't look hugely different, but we're on to an important piece. Well, for a start, look at this. The socks have been transferred from my 9-inch circulars onto the magic loop. Why? Because we're onto the toe. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's progress, Kim. That's you're doing well. Yeah, don't worry. This is me that we're talking about. I managed to start on the toe decreases, but not before knitting another extra stitch, then having to frog it back another few rows, having to stick in another lifeline, and then trying again. So whenever I start to feel like, oh, we're nearly there, then I remember that I've got another one to do before Christmas, and I'm like, because it's just around the corner, you guys. I've been vlogmassing for 14 days now. 2 weeks. That's gone really quick. I'm not gonna lie. I wouldn't say it's been easy. It has definitely been harder this time around because we've been juggling homeschool as well. But yesterday, the big beastie English topic assignment that my daughter had been working on, she's finished that now, so she's pretty much fingerlished. Irony. She's finished her English work for the term. So I think we've just got some maths work and a little bit of physics to do, and she's done. And that'll make things a little bit easier for me as well, because then I don't have to focus so much on the homeschooling. I can also focus on socks and the like. Anyway, so that's the advent calendar. That's the sock progress. So now let's talk a little bit about GSPR. I think you can tell how I feel about it just from that face alone. Oh, good grief. There's just question marks everywhere. I tried to do as much research as I possibly could, and I got to the point where I just thought, you know what, there's no point. I could read up everything that's been written about this topic and I will still come away none the wiser. The honest truth is that there are some parts of this that have no answers. I feel like this is going to be a lot like the changes that came in when Brexit was finalised, in that there was a lot of confusion, there was a fair amount of it wasn't contradictory advice actually, no, it was just that it was advice and guidelines that were left so open in its wording that they could be interpreted many different ways. And if you followed the wording to a T, you could theoretically create a scenario where a small business would end up in prison, which is not going to happen, by the by. I've seen a lot of people freaking out about this, and it's just, small business owners are not going to get piled off into prison because they fail to understand guidelines which are murky. And also you've got to remember that I'm coming at this from the point of view as a one-woman business, handmade, I can't even point to them now. Oh, there you go, one. I make physical handmade products. So a one-woman show, and everything that I'm saying is coming from that point of view. And I'm in the UK. Now, the reason I decided to do a video on this topic was because I got a comment from a viewer, I'm really sorry, I forget who was asking for my thoughts about it, I guess. Because it doesn't just affect people from the UK selling to the EU, this affects anybody outside of the EU selling to the EU. And I think nobody knows for sure what has brought this about. I do think Temu and Shein and the fact that a lot of the products coming in from them, they've been found to have dangerously high levels of stuff. I'm not going to get into that again. I did that the other day with the chocolates, and that was just a throwaway comment. I just did, so I don't really want to get into a conversation about the lead and the carcinogenics that are found in a lot of the Temu and Shein items, but you've probably seen the headlines yourself. And if you haven't, just Google it. There's loads of stuff out there. And it could be to counteract that. It could also be from an economic standpoint though, because you may have heard me in the past talking about following the money in terms of looking for reasons why corporations and businesses act a certain way. Follow the money. And I know that the EU isn't a corporation or a business, but I think it's fair to say that every country that is in receipt of Temu and Shein style stuff has noticed a knock-on effect on their economy, because a lot of the money that is being spent by people in these countries, the UK included, is going out of the country to these companies. A lot of money that would otherwise have been spent in the countries. And our economies are fighting at the moment, aren't they? So it would also make sense for the countries from an economic standpoint. I'm assuming. I would also like to point out, as you know, this will be no surprise to anyone, I'm not an economist. Now, for anybody who doesn't know what GPSR is, let's see if I can remember what it stands for without looking at my notes. General Product Safety Regulation? General Product Safety Regulation. If you're a small handmade business, then according to the UK government website, you have to consider yourself the manufacturer, the importer, and the distributor. Definitely the distributor. Again, this is physical handmade products. I'm not sure how this is for other companies who import stuff. Now, I didn't look into exactly what needs to be done, and I'll explain why in a bit, but essentially there's documents that you are going to have to fill in, complete, create, keep updated. There's going to be serial numbers that you're going to have to use. There's going to be, I think, on the products themselves, explaining its safety standards. This is the important bit though. If you are looking to sell to the EU from outside of the EU, you will need to pay an authorised representative, which is usually a company that you pay monthly or annually to, and they will check all of your stuff and basically give you the heads up. No, thumbs up or the thumbs down. How much that will cost, I've seen figures as small as £15 to £20 a month. I've seen figures that run into the thousands. So I don't know. I do think it will depend on what you sell and how many products that you have. This is why you need to speak to a professional. Or at the very least, find a company that offers this service and discuss it with them. Now, there's a couple of other things that I've also seen. I've seen someone say that it doesn't matter because Etsy will be the authorised representative. No. Are you honestly expecting Etsy to take responsibility, legal responsibility for something like this. Absolutely bloody not. They have made their entire business model one where they are very much hands-off, and all of the risk is in the laps of the sellers. If they come out and they become an authorised representative, easy for me to say, I will be really surprised. I will be very, very surprised, but I would say absolutely not. And again, it would be a fee that you would have to pay for, which isn't currently something that they offer. So you can imagine that even if they were to, you would have to pay through the nose for it. And I personally wouldn't trust Etsy as far as I could throw them. So to that person, I'd say, don't rely on Etsy, love. And the other thing that I've found a lot of toing and froing about is the topic of digital products, whether or not they're included. And now my initial thought was, well, no. It's like an intangible product. Why would that be included? But apparently it might be. And I've seen a lot of people not know, and not just people like me, like one people businesses, small businesses and stuff, people whose job it is to know, not know. And this is where it comes back to everything being so broad and too broad. Everything is so open to interpretation that it could mean either or. So this is why we need more. We need more something. Guidance. And unsurprisingly, I have seen, since this all kicked off, a buttload of small businesses that I follow on Instagram just coming out with their own posts saying, you know what, I can't do this. I'm going to have to stop selling to the EU and Northern Ireland. Oh yes, because we're in the UK. Northern Ireland is obviously a part of the UK. Ireland is the EU. However, Brexit, the gift that keeps on giving, when they were trying to finalise it, there was this huge issue about, and I don't really understand this, but trying to avoid a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, which is fair enough. So, for the case of this, GPSR, they are treating Northern Ireland as an EU state. So it's a part of the UK that's included with the EU states in terms of selling to. So that's fun. This is for us UK sellers. And this is where things get really freaking irritating for us, as if it wasn't already, because you cannot just sift Northern Ireland out of your shipping settings. So if you decide because of this that you cannot sell to the EU anymore, it's easy enough to not sell to EU countries, but Etsy, certainly at the time of filming, don't have an option to filter out Northern Ireland, nor does Shopify. So how can we stop selling there? If you're in Northern Ireland, I'm really sorry, I don't want to stop selling to you. I don't want to stop selling to the EU, to be brutally honest. Which just brings us back to Brexit again, and not to get political, but what a load of that's turned out to be. So yes, in a nutshell, this is going to be difficult for everyone outside of the EU, selling into the EU. For those of us in the UK, there is just that extra sprinkling of and for those of you in the UK, I would love to hear how you're getting around that Northern Ireland issue. Have I missed something? Is there a way to filter out Northern Ireland from your shipping? Or are we just hoping we don't get orders in that we would then have to immediately cancel and refund? Because at the moment, that's the only other option I can think of, which, you know, is not ideal. I do think it's going to be a lot like when Brexit was initially finalised. For us here in the UK, things were all up in the air, and they did kind of calm down with time, and certain things got tweaked and tidied up a little bit, I guess, with time. It's still a pain in the neck, which is why I no longer sell to the EU. And that's not because of GPSR, that's the latest thing. And I'm going to be honest, if I had continued to sell to the EU back then, this would have been the end of that. Because I think what you've got to ask yourself is essentially, how many times do you sell to the EU? But if you think that it's going to be a chunk of money that you're going to lose, then I think it is worth jumping through that extra hoop, or, let's be honest, hoops, and getting an authorised representative. But it's not something that is worth my time, my energy, or my money. And it seems to be across board with a lot of small business owners that I'm seeing at the moment. And on that note, right, as you can tell, I am no professional. And none of this was meant as advice. It was merely my opinion. And you know what they say about opinions. We all have them. So I would love to hear from you how you're dealing with this. If you're dealing with it, or if you've decided that, you know what, nope, I cannot. I want to have a quieter, more chilled out 2025, not a stressier one. And if there's any workarounds with that Northern Ireland shipping thing that I might have missed, please do come and tell me, because that will be a job to look at in the new year otherwise. Alright you guys, I'll be back tomorrow and we will not be talking about GPS bloody R. Okay? Cool. Ta-ra.